At the very beginning of today's program, I want to show everyone a post from the White House. It was just posted a few minutes ago and is very mysterious. What exactly are they up to? I'll share it with you all in a moment. In addition, Trump has already decided to postpone the strike against Iran by 10 days. At the same time, he says he wants to negotiate a result, but Iran is taking a tough stance, saying they've never even heard of any negotiations. That's the situation. The statements from both sides are completely inconsistent. So what's really going on with the Iran war right now? And another thing, the little pinks, the Chinese little pinks, are getting involved in the Iran war, but they're being arrested in the United States. What's going on here? Hey, this is quite a plot twist, isn't it? Let me share something quite interesting with everyone. Also, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, it's very likely about to open its doors. The game being played behind the scenes here is multi-layered and extremely deep, so I'll give you a detailed analysis. Today, a lot of the news is related to things happening in the United States. For those viewers who are not in the United States, I think it's also very good to learn a bit about this. So welcome to listen to and watch Good Morning America, brought to you by Fang Wei. Hello to our YouTube viewers and greetings to all the listeners of Sound of Hope, Silicon Valley FM 96.1. All right, now let's get straight to the point. First, let's take a look at a tweet just posted by the White House. This tweet only has 4 characters, very fast. And below that, it says, something new. This is not a video. It's just a photo, and the photo says something new. That's all there is to it, something new. Isn't that kind of fun? So, what does Trump do? The old man often plays these playful tricks, making it hard for people to see through him. He really isn't a traditional political figure, or rather, a traditional politician. I've already told everyone this administration is a civilian government with very few American officials like this. Traditional officials, most of them are all newcomers. In this administration, Trump himself is actually an informal figure. Under him, there are 12, and including himself, 13 billionaires. People who have never been involved in politics before, like Lutanic and Besant, and so on. This whole bunch, and there's also the Secretary of Energy, Sean Duffy. None of them have ever held office before, but they all came in because they love America, so their approach has changed the entire image of the U.S. government abroad. It's very direct, and sometimes even quite mischievous. So what does this actually mean? Well, Fang Wei is here today to try to explain to you what exactly the mysterious post from the White House is talking about. All right, before we get into that, let me quickly update you on the latest situation. What's going on between the U.S. and the Israeli Defense Forces? Well, on Thursday, yesterday, they continued to carry out large-scale airstrikes on Idlib and surrounding military facilities. Israel deployed more than 60 fighter jets and used 150 heavy bombs. They destroyed multiple missile production facilities, as well as weapons depots and air defense systems. As for Trump, yesterday he announced on Truth Social that this should be the biggest news of the day, but now it seems like it's just one of the biggest news stories and actually one of the more contradictory ones. Trump said that the strike on Iran's energy facilities will be postponed until April 6th. Why? According to Trump, at the request of the Iranian government, he hereby declares that he will delay the strike on energy facilities by 10 days until 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, April 6th. Okay, and then Trump also said at yesterday's cabinet meeting that Tehran showed goodwill this week by allowing 10 cruise ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Originally, they had promised to allow 8 ships, but later increased it to 10 so all of them could pass through smoothly. So, these cruise ships, many of them are vessels flying the Pakistani flag. Trump believes this is a very important gift from Iran to the United States, and even more importantly, it's a gesture. This shows that they want to negotiate peace. Of course, at the same time, the Pentagon is deploying an additional 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East. This is in addition to the 2 Marine Corps task forces and the 82nd Airborne Division, so it's another 10,000 ground troops being sent. As for Trump, he posted on social media saying that Iran had better take the negotiations seriously, or it will be too late, because once things reach that point, there will be no turning back and the consequences will be unimaginable. Of course, with these additional 10,000 troops, plus the previous 8,000, that basically makes 18,000 in total. This is not the kind of troop strength used in the full-scale invasion of Iraq in 2003, because the number of troops is far from sufficient for that. Even 20,000 troops would be far from enough. Back when Iraq was invaded, it took 500,000 troops. So obviously the goal this time is to secure the area near the Gulf Strait, to occupy it and ensure the safety of shipping routes. Meanwhile, what was the other side's response? The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a statement through their official media called SEPA News, saying, first, they prohibit ships belonging to the United States, enemy countries, their allies and supporters from passing through the Strait of Hormuz. No route or destination is allowed. That's the first point. Second, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy has already issued warnings to 3 container ships of different nationalities, forcing them to turn back. As for which 3 ships, or rather which 3 different nationalities they are, I'll tell you in a moment. You might be surprised when you hear it, okay? Really? In addition, it was stated again that US President Trump's claim about the strait being open is a lie. Wow, oh my. And then this online media, ASUS, reported that Iran's supreme leader has not yet approved negotiations with the United States. But we've been reporting for several days that Iran's foreign minister said the supreme leader had approved it, and now there's another claim that he hasn't approved it. Of course, this information is not, how should I put it, it's not official. It's also just a rumor circulating among the public. And then, even though the supreme leader has not yet approved it, and Iran has publicly announced that it is unwilling to negotiate, in reality, as we clearly know, this is what Acer itself said, there are actually Iranian officials who are very interested in negotiations. So, sources told Asia that the main issue lies in distrust of Iran and suspicion that the United States is trying to deceive them again. So how should we interpret this phenomenon? First of all, what Trump says and what the Iranian side says are completely different. And even within Iran, what one official says is different from what another says. It's obvious there's internal conflict, not just internal friction, but real internal conflict. So this is clearly a struggle between 2 different approaches. The key issue is how Trump will judge the situation. So let me show you that chart again. What is Trump's assessment? Let's take another look at that chart. Something new soon. What does that mean? So when it comes to warfare, there's a saying in Sun Tzu's Art of War, warfare is the way of deception. What does that mean? Sun Tzu explains in detail. Therefore, when able, feign inability. When deploying troops, appear inactive. To observe from afar as if close, and from close as if afar, what does that mean? It means that war is essentially a form of deception. This psychological warfare is about deceiving the enemy. While fighting a physical battle, you're also waging a psychological one. The core of this psychological warfare is to confuse and mislead the opponent through deception. That's why there's the saying, when real appear false, when false appear real. With all this ambiguity, it's hard to get a clear grasp of the situation. So when Trump says they're postponing for 10 days until April 6th to consider a strike, could they actually attack tomorrow? Sometimes a delay announcement is exactly when they plan to strike. Is that possible? We really need to pay attention. This weekend, we should be especially alert to any moves from the United States. With Iran making such statements, can we take Trump at face value? I don't think so. But anyway, there's a little side story here. Who else might be affected by Iran's orders? According to recent media reports, I'm not sure which outlet, maybe a Chinese one, but it seems credible, on March 27th, which is today, 2 container ships under COSCO Shipping, one called the COSCO Arctic Ocean and the other the COSCO Indian Ocean, were involved. These 2 ships were originally going to pass through the strait, but while they were on their way there, they were forced to heed a warning and had to turn back toward the Persian Gulf. So there's been a lot of mockery online. Didn't people say that flying the 5-star red flag would let you pass without trouble? Even as Iran's good friend, you still couldn't get through. Just earlier, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard had announced that they had issued warnings to 3 container ships of different nationalities, forcing them to turn back. Okay, that's very likely. Among these 3 container ships of different nationalities, 2 of them are the ones we mentioned, COSCO Arctic Ocean and COSCO Indian Ocean. In short, they're Chinese ships. Of course, we all know that the Chinese Communist Party has always wanted to use Iran as its hand or as a pawn in the Middle East, but at the same time, Iran also wants to use the CCP. Yesterday, I explained this to everyone in detail. In Iran, the Shia regime is a theocracy. And according to their doctrine, the CCP is considered a lesser demon, while the United States is the greater demon. So Iran wants to use the lesser demon to deal with the greater demon. So for Khamenei, anything that is not Islam is considered a demon. Therefore, the 2 sides are indeed not fighting back to back or heart to heart, so to speak. They are just using each other. As things stand now, he also needs to show a tough stance, and the CCP's shipping containers can't get out, can't reach the sea, and have to obediently withdraw from the Persian Gulf. That's the situation. All right, so in summary, what I mean to say is that what will happen this weekend is just like that fantastical picture Trump posted at the White House earlier. Nobody knows. So everyone must pay close attention to the timing and location. If anything happens, no matter if it's in the middle of the night at 2 or 3 in the morning, Fang Wei will bring you the fastest reports and analysis at the very first moment. So stay tuned to Fang Wei Time, subscribe, and also turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the fastest news updates. All right, next, let me briefly interrupt to share some information from our sponsor. Quite a few viewers have asked us about Genex, the Genex brand we've been recommending, especially their American Ginseng Black Gold capsules. Why do we keep promoting this product? To be honest, it's because we use it ourselves. My editors use it, our staff use it, and they also regularly send it to their families back in mainland China. The reason is that this product is genuinely good, so we feel confident recommending it to our own families, right? That's why not long ago we also received feedback from a viewer living in Florida. This viewer, well, her aunt is almost 70 years old and still working. Her job requires her to stay alert and focused, but over the past few years her health has been troubling her. She gets tired easily, lacks energy, often feels thirsty, and has trouble sleeping. Her overall immunity isn't what it used to be and her blood pressure is unstable. She said it feels like she's physically present but not really in a good state. But around June or July last year, she started taking the Canadian black high-quality American ginseng that we recommended. She said it wasn't an immediate or dramatic change, but gradually she noticed that she started to feel more energetic. She didn't get tired as easily, and she also had to get up less often at night. Her sleep became deeper, and both her mental state and immunity improved a lot compared to before. She finally told us that this year, her routine checkup results looked much better than last year's. The doctor also said her condition was quite good. So, if you or your friends or elders around you have been experiencing similar symptoms lately, like getting tired easily, not sleeping well, or just not feeling mentally sharp overall, you can try this American ginseng Hegaozi. It can replenish your energy, promote wellness, relieve fatigue, improve sleep, and boost immunity. It also helps improve cardiovascular health, making it very suitable for daily health maintenance. Alright, so the discount code is still Fangwei, right? Using the Pinyin Fangwei will get you a 15% discount. Click the description box below to learn more. Ultimately, what's most important is finding what suits you, isn't it? I highly recommend everyone give it a try. Alright, now let's talk about this next topic. It's called Little Pink Plays with Bombs, but before the bomb goes off, the person gets caught. What's going on here? While the war in Iran is ongoing, China's Little Pink gets arrested in the United States. What kind of logic is that? Is this really happening? Yes, it is. So how did this come about? Let me explain this news story to everyone. But the news story I'm talking about is a real event. The Iran war is happening right now, right? The U.S. military command that's leading the Iran war, let's call it a military district, or more accurately, the command center is called the Central Command CENTCOM. Because it's in the Middle East, the area in charge there is called the Central Command. Its location is actually not in the Middle East, but in Florida, on the central west coast of Florida, at a place called MacDill Air Force Base. This place is also the headquarters for U.S. Special Operations Forces. So, the Central Command, the U.S. Central Command, and the Special Operations Command are both there. And what happened recently? 3 tourists from China arrived, a mother and a pair of siblings. These siblings worked together to make a homemade bomb. On March 10th, which was about 15 days ago, they placed the bomb at the visitor center of MacDill Air Force Base. Many Air Force bases that are open to the public have a visitor center. They put the bomb in a hard-to-find corner of the visitor center. Alright, then on March 11th, he made a phone call. He bought a disposable phone at Best Buy and called the police, saying there was a bomb at the Air Force Base, but he didn't say where it was. Then on the next day, March 12th, he fled back to China. So what happened after the siblings fled back to China? In the end, the dud bomb didn't explode, but 6 days later, it was discovered by an Air Force soldier at the visitor center who quickly called the police for an emergency response. The bomb was then sent directly to the bomb headquarters of the FBI in Alabama for analysis. Of course, they traced the call back to that phone, realizing that it was actually a real threat. Then they checked where the phone call originated from and very quickly found out that the phone number was sold by Best Buy. They went to Best Buy, pulled up the surveillance footage, and saw who bought it, so they identified who this person was. After the siblings fled back to China, they noticed that there didn't seem to be any commotion. They thought everything was fine, but when the sister returned to the U.S., she was immediately arrested. Their mother was still in the U.S. as well. The mother was also arrested, and she confessed without hesitation, saying her son was the mastermind and she just helped with the matter. So far, the mother has been detained but has not been formally charged, but the sister was charged immediately after being arrested. So right now, the federal government hasn't announced a clear motive, but based on what they've said, it's obvious that they have strong grievances against the US government. However, there is still no evidence linking this to the Chinese Communist Party, therefore I'm going to make a reasonable inference here. It's clear that they are very dissatisfied with the US government's policy on the Iran war. Otherwise, why would they try to bomb what's called MacDill, right? MacDill Air Force Base, the Central Command. So regarding this matter, I'm making an inference here. This is just an inference. So a little pink, one of these little pinks, came to the US as a tourist and ended up trying to bomb the Central Command to scare them, to intimidate the Central Command. But in the end, the bomb didn't go off, it was a dud, and the person got caught. Now, this younger brother is still in China, and he's facing several charges, including 4 counts. Attempting to damage government property with fire or explosive devices, and illegally manufacturing destructive devices. There are also charges like possession of unregistered destructive devices and so on. The maximum sentence could be 40 years in prison, so this person shouldn't even think about coming to the US again. As for his sister, her name is Anne-Marie Zheng, their family name is Zheng. She's charged as an accomplice, helping her brother make the bomb and tampering with evidence. She could face up to 30 years in prison. Oh my God, it's really rare to see a little pink actually take action like this in the US. But you can also see, if what I'm saying is correct, and this really is a little pink, just how effective the CCP's brainwashing is. It really shows just how much of an impact this kind of brainwashing can have on ordinary Chinese people, to the point where someone would actually go so far as to take action. But you know, their skills just aren't up to par. They tried to make a bomb, but it didn't go off properly. Now let's move on. This next topic is about the US Department of Homeland Security, which might be reopening soon after being shut down for 42 days. This is quite an interesting piece of news, so let me share it with you. As we all know, there have been huge lines at airports everywhere recently, which has sparked public outrage, and that outrage has actually had an effect. So what's the result? It's that the DHS can reopen, or is very likely to reopen. What happened? Well, this is news from yesterday. The Senate passed the DHS appropriations bill, allowing it to reopen. All right, let's take a look back at the whole situation. Now, it's up to the House of Representatives, right? If the House passes it, Trump will definitely sign it and it'll go through. Let's rewind the whole thing a bit. We all know that back on October 1st last year, there was a controversy over illegal immigration enforcement in Minnesota. The accusation was that ICE shot and killed 2 people. So, the Democrats blocked the federal government's budget, which caused the federal government to shut down starting from October 1st last year, the first day of the new fiscal year. The shutdown lasted for 43 days. Later on, when the government reopened, the condition was that the budgets for the other 12 departments could be approved, but not for the Department of Homeland Security. So, they withheld the budget and demanded reforms. What kind of reforms, for example? Where are you supposed to conduct searches? For illegal immigrants, the court has to approve it in advance. This is just like conducting raids on illegal immigrants or investigating them, which is treated the same as investigating criminals. Secondly, they said you can't wear masks. Not being allowed to wear masks, how could that be acceptable? So the Department of Homeland Security immediately refused. Why? Because any place I want to search requires court approval. Then I have no freedom at all. That's the first thing. The second thing is not being allowed to wear masks. In such intense situations, how can we guarantee the safety of our agents, our special agents? What if they face retaliation, right? So because of this, both sides ended up in a standoff there. As a result, the shutdown continued, and this time it lasted for 42 days. We all know that the last shutdown lasted 43 days, and this one lasted 42 days. The ones who suffered the most were the TSA, right? The Transportation Security Administration. Now, more than 400 people have already resigned because they couldn't get paid, right? For those living paycheck to paycheck, if they can't make ends meet, they just quit. There were long lines at the airport, and after people had to wait for so long, even the Democrats couldn't take it anymore, because this is a double-edged sword. If you try to block the Republicans, you end up hurting ordinary people, and if you hurt ordinary people, they'll punish you with their votes. So, to put it simply, the conclusion is that yesterday the Senate passed a bill to allocate a budget to the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. However, and this is an important however, ICE and part of CBP, that is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and some of Customs and Border Protection, will not receive funding. These 2 agencies are not getting any money. Of course, these 2 agencies are the most controversial ones, right? So why did the Republicans agree to this? Aren't these the 2 key departments responsible for controlling the border? Let me just mention here, ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is responsible for enforcing laws against illegal immigrants within the country. CBP, or Customs and Border Protection, is responsible for the border itself. CBP is also often referred to as Border Patrol, and they handle matters right at the border. ICE handles matters within the border. That's the difference here. So these are the key departments responsible for controlling the border and illegal immigration. Why would they make concessions? Because last year's big appropriations bill already allocated funds, with special funds set aside just for them, $190 billion in total. Of that, $75 billion was specifically for ICE and $65 billion for Border Patrol. You know, ICE only spends about $8 to $10 billion a year, so giving them $75 billion at once means they're set for 6 or 7 years. So they really don't need your DHS budget at all. Same with me. I've got enough funding for 6 or 7 years. All my pay and provisions are covered. So there's no problem at all. Therefore, if this bill passes like this, what does it mean? It means the Democrats are saving face. Look, I blocked it, and in the end, I only let it pass after removing those two controversial agencies, so I look good. But they didn't get anything substantial, right? What do I mean by substantial? It means actually withholding the other side's funding, or requiring people to wear masks, or requiring a court-issued search warrant before conducting a search. None of that was achieved. As for the Republicans, they got the real benefits. The money is still there, and they didn't have to make any concessions at all. Because when the big spending bill passed last year, the groundwork was already laid, ensuring that these two agencies would be well funded. So let's backtrack a bit here. There are actually three reasons why the Democrats really gave in. The first is what we just mentioned. The shutdown of the DHS led to long lines at airports, which really hurt the Democrats. When ordinary people get frustrated in those situations, who do they blame? Of course, they blame the Democrats. That's the first reason. But there are also a second and a third reason. The second reason is that yesterday Trump announced he would sign a national emergency order saying, "This can't go on. I'll just use money from the Beautiful America Act to pay the TSA." In other words, whether you agree or not, Trump was going to pay them anyway. So if you keep pushing, you end up being the bad guy while others look like the good guys. That's why it's hard to hold the line. Third, yesterday Trump posted 2 tweets in a row, once again strongly calling for the abolition of the filibuster. So what did Trump say? He said, "Our Republican senators, how long are you going to wait before you finally say enough is enough?" There will always come a moment when you have to do what should have been done long ago. And what is that? If the Democrats ever get the chance, the very first thing they will do is abolish the filibuster. Get the airports and everything else back up and running, and at the same time, add all 5 provisions of the Save America Act in their entirety, going all out to achieve a complete victory. That's why Trump is still fighting every day, urging to push this rescue bill through as quickly as possible. So with the DHS being blocked, it actually gives them a chance to push through, making it a 2-pronged force. Trump's meaning is very, very clear. And what he just said is also very clear. If you don't get rid of them, they'll get rid of you. So what is Tuberville's view? I've explained Tuberville's view to everyone before, but for those who haven't heard it, I'll say it again in his own words. He said, if someone wants to steal a car, don't take the keys from me. What he means is abolishing the rescue, abolishing the filibuster, right? It's about doing bad things. If you want to do something bad, do it yourself, but I won't do it. That's what he means. So his thinking is that with this rescue bill, after a long debate, no matter what, it will be disadvantageous to the Democrats because the public will say, wow, they're just going to keep talking forever and never let us see this voter ID. Do you think that makes sense? So the public will have their own opinions, and these opinions will be unfavorable to the Democrats, and that's enough. All right, so these are the different perspectives of both sides. So at a certain point, they'll pull back and just scrap this bill. But as he said earlier, it's enough if public opinion has already been swayed. That's why Trump is so straightforward. If the filibuster is abolished, if you do not do it, others will. So let's do another poll here. Do you support Trump or do you support Tuberville? If you support Trump, type 1. If you support Tuberville, type 2. Let me just say again, I support Trump. Because this was never the case. The filibuster has never been a part of the U.S. Constitution or the founding principles. The founding principle is majority rule. Decisions are made by the majority. But the current filibuster is minority rule. It just means the minority can veto things. Because the original filibuster was just about free speech, right? Free speech meant saying everything you know and not holding anything back. But later it was distorted and turned into what we now call a filibuster, this excessively long speech. If the speech is so long, why not just abolish it? Right? But instead, it has been kept all along as this deformed, distorted thing for the first time. It was in 1917 that they tried to stop it. At that time, President Wilson, during World War I, wanted to provide armed escorts for American merchant ships crossing the Atlantic. At that time, it kept getting blocked in Congress, so because of this, for the first time, a restriction was placed on the filibuster. The content of this restriction was that a 2/3 majority could vote to end the filibuster. So with 100 members of Congress, that means 66 votes, right? And then the second time, which was the most recent, was in 1975. At that time, the Civil Rights Act was also being delayed and obstructed too many times. Back then, it was the Democratic Party that was blocking it. In that situation, around 1975, getting a 2/3 majority, 66 votes, was simply impossible. No bill could pass at all. So because of that, a change was made in 1975, changing it from 2/3, 66 votes, to 3/4. What does 4/4 mean? Sorry, I misspoke. It changed from 2/3 to 60% when converted to a percentage is today's 60 votes. But why 60? 2/3 is 66, 67. What's the difference between 60 and 67, right? It actually doesn't make sense. What really makes sense is a simple majority rule, not minority veto. So this brings me to repeat myself again. Please don't mind if I sound repetitive, because there are always new viewers. So what I'm saying is that our current members of Congress, both senators and representatives, even the Senate Majority Leader, may not necessarily understand this. The true meaning behind the U.S. Founding Fathers drafting the Constitution. You know, in the United States, whether you become a citizen or you run for city council, county council, state legislature, member of Congress, or senator, there is not a single place where they test whether you actually understand the Constitution. If you get more votes, you win. It's that simple. More votes means you get elected. They don't test your knowledge. So as a result, a lot of people don't know even the most basic things. So the rules are really just there to protect what they see as traditional political correctness, the traditional dignity of Congress, a certain decency. But in reality, this actually goes against constitutional principles. All right, let's take a look at ICE agents' performance at the airport. It was really impressive. Let me quickly explain what happened. So what was going on with the ICE agents? They were brought in to fill the staffing gaps at TSA, right? Trump deployed them for this purpose. As a result, the 5-hour lines at Atlanta airport were reduced to just 40 minutes, drastically shortening the wait time at this busy airport. In addition to handling luggage and security checks, ICE agents also handed out bottled drinking water to travelers. They helped people carry their luggage. They also helped clean up certain areas and dealt with all sorts of problems at the airport, so all of a sudden it was like this whole team was serving the general public. They were able to handle all kinds of challenges faced by the airport staff. What kind of problem was there? Yesterday it became national news in the United States. What happened? At New York's JFK International Airport, while passengers were lining up and waiting for security checks, a man holding a baby suddenly discovered that his 1-year-old child had stopped breathing. And trying to wake the baby didn't work either. There was no response. In a panic, he rushed out of the line, and other passengers nearby started screaming. Then an ICE agent saw what was happening, quickly ran over and told the man to hand him the child. After receiving the baby, the agent immediately assessed the situation and performed what's called the Heimlich maneuver. I'm not exactly sure what the Heimlich maneuver is. Maybe it's like artificial respiration. A few minutes later, the child started breathing normally again. Then what happened? Well, emergency medical personnel quickly arrived at the scene with medical equipment to conduct further monitoring and assessment. The evaluation concluded that the child's health condition was good. It was probably just blocked the whole time, maybe while sleeping. Maybe the father didn't know how to hold the baby properly. Just like Fang Wen. Anyway, they were still able to take a flight and leave, so this incident became widely praised. Yesterday, it even became national news, and everyone said how amazing ICE is. The UK's Daily Telegraph also reported that ICE's interactions with passengers at Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport were overall very positive and proactive. Some passengers even left the long security lines just to shake hands with ICE agents and thank them. A few days ago, I saw a lot of videos on X, soldiers eating inside, you know, and then a little kid walked up to a soldier, raised his little hand to salute, and the soldier quickly stood up to return the salute. Everyone applauded together. So Americans have a lot of respect for the military, right? Soldiers, police officers, firefighters, and 911 emergency responders, including ICE. For Americans, these are all considered service members. So this is the public expressing their gratitude to them, and clearly they live up to it. They truly deserve the public's appreciation. All right, then Trump also specifically tweeted saying, did you see that? He wasn't wearing a mask during airport security checks. It's not that we're afraid of wearing masks, it's just that I don't necessarily have to wear one. That's what he meant. But of course, in situations where safety is a concern, wearing a mask is completely reasonable and should be done. At the airport, people weren't wearing masks, right? So why are you all in such a hurry? What are you demanding anyway?